Over the last decade, I've stayed at Airbnbs around the world. And if you're checking out this episode, you've probably also stayed at an Airbnb in the past too. And for me, the experience has kind of fallen off from where it was. There's tons of fees. Sometimes the listings don't actually match where you're actually going to stay. And the customer service, it could be improved. Enter Caza De Casa and Mark O'Sullivan. Caza De Casa is a startup based out of Medellin that is looking to disrupt the home sharing industry and offer an alternative to Airbnb. Mark joins the podcast today to talk about why he created Caza De Casa, where it is today, and what he's hoping for in the future. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is Future Signal. Mark, how you doing? Welcome to Future Signal. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, Jarrett, thank you very much for bringing me onto the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here and be able to talk with you today about Caza De Casa.
Caza De Casa. We're going to dive into exactly what that translates to if you don't speak Spanish. But before we do, kind of lay out what Caza De Casa is, I think a super simple thing that's on your website is basically like we are an alternative to Airbnb. But if you could dive into the backstory, just like the quick 30 seconds, how you got to this solution, like what is the problem?
So the big thing for me, whenever I was starting Caza De Casa, and even before this, is that I was traveling around the world, visiting different countries, and always trying out different places, figure out where I can find a place to call home. And whenever I was traveling from place to place, I was always using Airbnb. But what I noticed in recent years is that the prices on Airbnb have been getting more and more expensive. So one thing that I always did whenever I arrived at a new destination is a case of, okay, I want to meet other digital nomads, find out, okay, is there a better alternative to Airbnb here? Can I look for properties on Facebook? Is it a case I just have to walk down the main street in the city and figure out, like, is there anywhere I can go to find a place to rent? And, over the years, it's like there was never any real alternative to Airbnb. And whenever me and my girlfriend arrived to Medellin in April 2024, we booked an Airbnb for a month, and it was a complete disaster. It was really, really bad. We walked into the Airbnb, and the first thing we noticed is that the sofa was a completely different color compared to the photographs on Airbnb. The place was an absolute mess. There's dirt and dust everywhere. There were stains on the bed. There were stains all over the kitchen. And I was like, why do we just accept this? Why do we just think, okay, I'm gonna spend like $3,000, $4,000, $500,000 to spend a month in a destination, and I have no clue what that place is going to be like whenever I arrive. And the cost is one thing, but the fact you're also gambling that the the location and the apartment's going to be okay whenever you arrive, that was something that really got to me. So I thought, okay, I'm tired waiting for someone to do an alternative to Airbnb. I'm just going to start working on this right now. That's what started it.
Yeah, and I'll shout out Caza De Casa dot XYZ, the website, and we can keep shouting that out because I think it's important for people to go see what you're building. And that backstory is reflected really, really well. I really like your website. I think it's very simple. You lay out the problem. Look, I'm a digital nomad. I was traveling around the world. There are issues in Airbnb. It is too expensive. There's not enough transparency. I think one of the things that I personally found with Airbnb is the customer service. So in the hypothetical or not hypothetical, where you walk in, the sofa's different, there's stains in the bed, this doesn't work, the stove doesn't work, the AC doesn't work, and you're in a really tropical place, and you're only going to be there for 3 days, what can you really do? There's like not much you can do. They already have your credit card on file. They've already maybe even charged it. So you're just kind of like, what are we doing? And then I think more recently, some of the problems I've seen personally is like I'm paying like $100 a night and I leave. And I've stayed 3 nights. So let's say $300 plus some of the fees, which are exorbitant, plus whatever things they got going on. And let's say it comes out to $350. Then they'll hit me, and there's tons of pictures all over the internet. I'm sure you've seen the cleaning fees are just, then it'll be like $200 cleaning fee. And it's like, I left an unwashed glass in the sink and they're like $200. So I think everyone who's been on this has probably stayed in an Airbnb and maybe understands the problem, which is great that you have people who already understand the problem. So now let's talk about directly right into the solution, Caza de Casa. What does that mean for those who don't speak Spanish? And what does your solution look like?
Yeah, so Casa de Casa means home hunting in Spanish. And it was actually quite difficult for us to come up with the name at the very start. And it wasn't as if we thought, okay, this is going to be a name that we can use forever. But you don't want to spend too much time focusing on the name. You actually have to get something built where people can use it and people can try it out and actually get the benefit from it. So the main thing for us is trying to work out a different model and figure out, okay, how can we produce something very similar to Airbnb where you have an application where you can find all the different properties that are available. You can filter through by price, you can filter through by bedrooms, by bathrooms, and then from that you can message all of the hosts directly on WhatsApp. And then straight after that, you can arrange a viewing, and then it's up to you to be able to negotiate, how you're going to do the payment. So some of our hosts on our platform prefer cash, some of them prefer bank transfer, and we really leave that up to the hosts to decide how they want to be paid.
So that's pretty great because there's a couple things when I think about this. First of all, it's a two-sided marketplace, which I want to get into because I think that those are really tough to build. We're surrounded by two-sided marketplaces, but I don't think people realize how difficult they are to build. I've talked to many entrepreneurs that are doing that, and they're just like, "Oh, it's a headache." You can't have too many Ubers, taxi drivers, and not enough people wanting to take an Uber. If it's a dating app, for example, which is a two-sided marketplace, you can't have. If it's for men and women, you can't have too many men and not enough women. You can't have too many women and not enough men. So I want to talk about that balance. But one of the things I want to dive into first is what you've just mentioned there, because when I look at Airbnb, the things it does really well or that are all in app is payments and messaging. And you've said, no, we're not going to focus on that. The world moves on WhatsApp, right? So you're going to use WhatsApp and then they're going to decide on their payments. Now, in the future, as this grows and when Caza de Casa is finally a unicorn and you get your $1 billion investment or your $1 billion valuation, would you move those things on app? Or is this a thing where you're always going to say, no, we're going to leave it up to the host and the guest and their relationship, and that may just exist on WhatsApp? Also knowing that if you've ever stayed at an Airbnb, you move to WhatsApp almost instantaneously. Okay, great. Hey, I'm going to be coming into town. I'm going to have this phone. I'm going to move to WhatsApp. When you look down the line, are you thinking you're always going to stay on WhatsApp? Let's maybe talk about messaging and then get into payments.
So I think for now, what you said, we don't have messaging or in-app payments right now, and that's really because I am bootstrapping this startup. This is being completely self-funded, so it's a case of it's just me and my partner, which is my girlfriend, working together on this, and we have a limited amount of resources in terms of like so many hours we can spend each day. So whenever you're bootstrapping a company and you're starting up like a brand new startup, you have to identify what is the most important features that you can deliver value to people. People are already used to messaging on WhatsApp, so we thought, okay, there's no real need for us to build that inside the app. I think later in the future, it might make sense whenever we have the ability to have hosts coming on and then they have, for example, sub-hosts or someone to help them manage the properties inside the application. That might make things a little bit easier. Um, but right now it's not a priority. And in terms of payments, I think payments is something we would like to offer it as an option. But whenever you have the option to pay inside an application, there's also fees involved in that. So we'd actually have to charge either the host or the guest. And for me, the main thing is trying to make sure it's going to be as cheap as possible for guests to be able to rent. All these other platforms, they charge around about 50% for the fees to be able to list there. So that if you imagine you have a property which you're going to pay $1,000, then that means it's going to be $150 is going to be from of that is going to be fees. So that's less money for the host. So it's also more money for the guest to pay. And the main thing for me is like if we can do the payments inside the application, which is what we want to eventually offer when we have more time to invest into that, then we want to be able to offer that. But it's going to be a case of it'll need to be covered the fees by the host.
One of the interesting things, and now you're going to get to, and I'm not sure, we have actually not talked about this. We've talked about other stuff off mic. We've talked about football, talked about Colombia a little bit. One of the things that's happening right now in crypto, and I talk to you about crypto for a second, is stable coins. And I'm not sure if you know what stable coins are. They're super simple. They're just digital dollars. There's a lot of people saying, look, you have an app like Uber. You have an app like Airbnb. These are apps that people use all over the world. And they're often used too all over the world between two people that don't have any common banking. It would have to be an international wire transfer. And in that world, I foresee Caza de Casa, the future of probably using some kind of a stable coin where people just control their own wallets, and you connect your bank account. So you're from Northern Ireland. Let's say you have a bank in Northern Ireland. I'm up here in Boston right now, and our banks, if they want to talk, it would normally be like a crazy wire transfer. But we somehow meet in Colombia, and I want to stay in your apartment. I would connect my bank. I would basically buy some digital dollars, and then I would send you digital dollars, and you would take those digital dollars and you would just transfer them, into whatever currency you would need. Maybe it's the Colombian peso. I do think stablecoins are going to be ideal for builders like you who want to offer low fee options and not make it complex, because I do think while it is nice and white glove on Airbnb, obviously the fees are crazy. Throughout the website, and you've just said it, that fees are like your number one thing. You want to keep those as low as possible. Talk to me about then, and I know this is on the website, but I want to hear from you how you guys are funding yourself, knowing that it's a duo, you're bootstrapping this, and obviously you have growth in the horizon. How are you not charging for a great product, but hoping to grow and get basically monthly recurring revenue, right? Get the MRR up so that way you can hit your growth goals.
So the main thing for us to be able to generate revenue, and at the minute we're getting revenue from this already, is through partnerships with other companies. And this is going to be companies which can offer complementary services or things which will be beneficial to people who are traveling or digital nomads. So an example for this would be health insurance. Genki is one of our partners. I've used Genki personally whenever I moved here to Colombia, because if you're going to apply for the digital nomad visa, you need to have health insurance. And if you don't have that, they're just not going to accept it. So I looked around the internet and I was looking for reviews on different providers, and I seen Genki and how they cover so many different countries around the world. And I thought, like, I want to try this out and see what happens. Thankfully, my application for the digital nomad visa was approved. So if anyone's going to go through that process, I can fully recommend them. And recently, unfortunately, I had to go through the process of making a claim through Genki. So I personally know through my own experience that they do pay out when it comes to dental problems. I was eating a yogurt with granola in it. I cracked my tooth, and I was like, okay, this is a great vacation. I went away to the coast of Colombia, and I came back and had to spend 5 hours in the dentist trying to get that all repaired. So that was a lot of fun. But the main thing for now is partnerships. Um, our whole policy is to not add in service fees. That's the last thing anyone wants, is to be paying more service fees. So we're looking at every single revenue stream, mechanism we can, every other mechanism we can make revenue. Another way that we've done this is partnerships with local professional photographers. And the reason why we wanted to reach out to local photographers is it's very similar to Airbnb. Whenever you're going to advertise your property, you want to make sure you have the best photographs possible. So we help make that as easy as possible by offering them an option to get a local professional photographer. And then we charge a little bit of commission on top of that. So all of this will add up over time, and as we expand to more and more cities, we're going to be having more and more demand for all these different services that we're going to be providing.
So great. That's awesome. It's kind of like an affiliate program. As we grow, that grows, and it grows hand in hand. Let's talk about right there. Let's talk about where you are. I know you're in Medellin, and so obviously Medellin. Since the pandemic, Medellin has been a place. Barcelona has been a place. San Juan, Puerto Rico, Mexico City. These are places that have really blown up with digital nomads. Are you looking at these cities where there's already a lot of digital nomads and maybe people looking for that month and they don't want to use Airbnb? Or are you looking at, like, how are you choosing the cities in which you're like, this is a great profile for what we're trying to do?
So one of the reasons why we have a wait list inside of our application right now is that it actually allows us to gather data in terms of where is the most in-demand cities, where's the most popular cities that people want to stay. From that, we can work out, okay, if we have, say, 50 people sign up and they want to stay in Rio, in Brazil, then we're like, okay, we already have the data that we know that we have the demand there in Rio. That means we can reach out to communities in Rio and Brazil and advertise to the host there. For example, estate agents, everyone else, and just say, look, we know there's demand, and we know if we open up Rio inside of our application that we're going to get people searching for properties there. So we'll be working hand in hand with property owners, estate agents to expand to all these new destinations. That's one mechanism. And it's also just being involved in the digital nomad community myself. I lived the lifestyle of a digital nomad for 2.5 years. I traveled from Lisbon to Bali. I was in Vietnam. I was in Greece. I was in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So I already know like the hotspots in terms of where it's very popular. But there's also other services such as Nomad List, which is now called nomads.com. And then there's also Nomad Leo, which is something which is very similar to nomads.com as well. So those are the type of resources which I find very powerful because we can monitor them and figure out, okay, where's actually popular right now and use that to our advantage.
Where are the most users right now? Is it in Medellin because that's where you are? Or is it like you just said? Is it somewhere in Vietnam? I don't know. Is it Rio? Is it in Buenos Aires? Where right now is the biggest hub for a Casa de Casa?
Right now, our biggest hub is in Medellin, and that's really because of how we positioned ourselves at the start. Whenever I first started Casa de Casa, I was advertising on the website that we help you find furnished apartments in Medellin, and I wanted to focus and niche down solamente, sorry, only in Medellin. There's me going into Spanish mode
I
and
love
putting
that.
sitting
I
here
love that.
in Medellin. That's what happens when you've been living here so long. So our hub right now is Medellin, and we have maybe about like 90% of our users focused on there. But we're starting to see growth in Bogota. There's more and more people here actually telling us that we want to find somewhere to stay in Bogota. So we're using that at the minute to reach out to contacts in Bogota to see if we can get some properties in. And whenever we get enough properties, then we can open that market up and we can help people find properties in Bogota as well.
Well, this is great. We spoke before we recorded, but we'll both be in Bogota next week, and I hope you and your partner come over and check out my apartment because I have a 2 bedroom, and I'm probably looking to find a roommate. So part of my question as well. Does it need to be an entire apartment, or do you also do rooms similar to like the Airbnb model?
So we only offer entire apartments right now. That's
Okay.
where we find like the most demand is right now.
Yep.
Occasionally we get some people messaging them and just saying, look, do you have a service to be able to find rooms as well? But I think there is a danger whenever you're starting a brand new company and a new startup, especially for the likes of myself and my partner, where we're bootstrapping this. So we do have limited resources and it's trying to identify, okay, where is the best place for us to focus our time? If we try and spread ourselves too thin and try and focus on too many different services and too many different options, then that could be problematic.
Yeah, totally. And I think when you're starting out, you just need to solve one problem and do it the best, and then you can add on ancillary solutions. Let's talk about your growth. And I think it's great you're going to move to or think about getting more properties on in Bogota because I think that's wonderful. On September 15th, so just a couple days ago, you tweeted that the target has been set 10 new properties a week on Casa de Casa. With 15 weeks remaining in the year, that means we should have 150 more properties before 2026, taking us to 285 in total. When do you think you get to 1,000? That probably happens in 2026. But what I'm trying to get is what is the acceleration of growth that you've seen? Because at some point it will be exponential, where it's not 15. It's not 10 new properties a week. There will be 10 new properties an hour, and then eventually it's 10 new properties a minute. So where are you on like the hockey stick of like a hockey stick curve of adoption right now?
So I think when we rebranded the entire website to say that we're alternative to Airbnb, we started to get a lot more attention, and that's actually been helped from our efforts and our marketing. So I'm doing videos pretty much every other day or a couple times a week to explain what's been happening behind the scenes and what we're currently working on. And the more I do that, the more I'm noticing I'm getting more views on YouTube, and getting more views on TikTok, more interactions on Twitter, and that's helping our growth. And as a result, we're getting more and more hosts sign up to the platform, advertising their properties. The target of 10 new properties a week might be ambitious for now because we haven't tapped into a few different market options. We haven't advertised in Product Hunt. We haven't shared this in Hacker News, which are two very popular websites to share startups. We can get some really good, valuable feedback there, and that could actually get us a lot more links and a lot more people signing up to advertise the property or advertising or searching for properties on our platform. So maybe we might not be able to hit that target before the end of the year. I said to my partner, I said, we've actually had a good uptick. We had 14 new properties the week before, and I thought, okay, we're advertising on Facebook groups, we're advertising on Twitter, we're constantly spreading the message as much as we can. And I think the next step is to start doing paid ads on Meta, across Instagram, on Facebook, and hopefully we'll get enough traction to keep that going in the right direction and get some hockey stick growth. That's the target, right? That's what everyone looks for.
That's what everyone's looking for. And so you've kind of just answered a couple things for me. One of the reasons why I like having founders on is I like creating, the idea of this entire episode is it should be something that's packaged that you could send to someone if they're interested in learning more about what you're doing, both guests and hosts, and then ideally funders or investors, people who are looking to do that. Have you talked already with investors? And if you have, what are some metrics that you've heard that they're looking for? Hey, Mark, we'd love to invest when you get to this amount of users, when you get to this growth, when you can show us this type of engagement. What are things that you think, and if you haven't talked to investors, also cool, but what are things you're trying to do strictly just to like play the game of we eventually or maybe want to get some funding from the outside?
Yeah, so right now, because it's entirely self-funded and we've still got enough runway to last, I'd say 2 to 3 years. So we've got a long time to keep going with this. We're not looking to raise external investment. I think keeping it lean and keeping it small means that, there's less pressure for us to add in the service fees, which is it's going to be something that will come up straight away if we approach investors and we say to them, look, we're building an alternative to Airbnb. And I know they're going to say this because it's proven that it works. And that's usually what VCs go for is like whenever they're investing into a new company, they want to see the unicorn startup. Whenever the startup gets $1 billion valuation. And for me, whenever I started this, it was never the ambition to be a $1 billion startup. It was a case of I want to solve a problem for people. And I know people are having this problem with Airbnb. And if we can grow this and take a percentage of the market, that's a lot of money to be able to capture. So the market is absolutely huge. There's so many big players, and if we can be a couple of percent, I'll be absolutely happy with that. I'll be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, it's a massive market, and I think it's great that you have such long burn rate or runway because most startups have 6 months to 12 months, and you're telling me you maybe have up to 36. So that's wonderful. I also, when I look at the website, when I look at the feel, when I look at the way you talk about it on X, it feels more of like a boutique option. So it's not going to be for everyone. And some of the offerings too, maybe more high end. And so it's just going to kind of self-select into a different crowd, which I think there's reason for that too. It's like, yeah, okay, I have Airbnb. If I'm doing this, I use VRBO if I'm doing this, but hey, maybe I should use Caza De Casa if we're doing this. And so it may just be a different audience, a different demographic. Is that how you're also thinking and positioning in the market?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just it's really to offer alternative to these other platforms where the hosts might be getting frustrated by the customer service and what's happening on the platforms that they're currently on. They might be a little bit frustrated to see that there's so many hundreds of dollars that have been, sorry, pardon me, there's so many hundreds of dollars being sent every single month whenever they're renting out their property to these platforms, and they're thinking to themselves, oh, I don't understand why I'm giving them so much money because I'm having to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And that's one of the conversations I've had with one of our first hosts who were interested in Costa Casa. He sat me down and just said to me, listen, Mark, I don't think it's right that I have to pay so much money to these platforms whenever it's me who's spending all the money on advertising. I'm spending all that money advertising it on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, TikTok, all these different platforms. And then they get the benefit from it because, they're normally coming directly from my advertisements. And that really stuck with me. I was like, okay, we're offering something which is going to be a solution for him so he can keep more of the revenue. He doesn't have to worry about like a percentage of that 15%, 20%, 25% going to Booking.com, Airbnb, wherever it is. So that's the main thing for us.
Yeah, I think that keeping the fees down is going to be amazing for all parties involved. And in my past, because I've lived a very not fully digital nomadic life, but a semi digital nomadic life where I'll go And for a while, I would go to Bogota for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 2 months. But when I'd go, I'd basically choose an Airbnb and I would stay there for like 2 nights. And then if I liked it, I'd be like, hey, can I stay longer? But I want to pay you off app because I pay less money, you get more money, and it's a massive win. And this already just feels like that. You're basically creating a network of trust between hosts and guests. And on that, when I look on the website, it's like, hey, if you want to be a host, I believe, reach out and we'll get you on the wait list. Right now, are you, and now I want to get into the two-sided nature of the marketplace because I do think that that's interesting. Are you guys creating demand and because you're monitoring supply so as to not just let anyone join? How does that work?
Yeah, so what you said previously about two-sided marketplace, and I think you explained it very well with examples of Uber and Tinder. But there's always like the hard part of the marketplace, which is in the case of Uber, is actually the taxi drivers. In the case of Tinder, I remember listening to um, some podcast episodes like this and reading up some books about this as well. The hard part is for Tinder was attractive people, attractive single people. They need to get them enough of them into the marketplace. And, for us, the two-sidedness is we need to get enough hosts into the platform and we need to get enough properties into the platform that the people, whenever they're searching for a property, they're going to find what they're looking for. Right now, I'd say that we're actually experiencing way more demand than the supply that we have. So a lot of my efforts recently has been trying to reach out to people that we can see advertising their properties on Facebook and just saying to them, look, we know there's people searching for properties in our application right now. We have more people waiting to gain access uh, whenever we're ready to onboard them. And part of the reason why I've delayed invitations for people wanting to find a property in Medellin is that we actually have a completely new search experience, which allows you to really drill down the different locations that you want to find a property in. Previously, we didn't have that. We just had it where you can search by price, you can search by, you can filter by price, you can filter by bedrooms, bathrooms, and also by features. And now this is going to really help people find exactly what they're looking for. But I think that's the problem in the two-sided marketplace is that you need to have enough of the hard side, and that's what we really need to like push on with and get more. So that's why I set that target of okay, I want to make sure we try and get 10 new properties a week because that would really help us provide more options and really help people.
So, if I may, the good properties and properties are the good looking people on Caza de Casa, and the users are the not good looking people. So there's going to be a lot more not good looking people looking for good looking people, aka a lot more users potentially looking for fewer properties. Is that accurate?
It's not the way I would say it, but yeah, I guess you could
Yeah,
be.
no, you don't. Yeah, I'm not going to quote you on this. That's me. I'm just trying to create the metaphor.
Yeah.
But that makes sense because if I go to stay, let's say you and I are traveling to New York and we have a business trip, and we'd much rather just stay with an Airbnb. We're two guys. We're entrepreneurs. That's just going to be better for our overall lifestyle. And we go look, and there's only like two places in each borough, and none of them are going to be open in our dates. We really do when we go and we think about going to New York. We really want to see, I don't know, 60 spots minimally in Manhattan because depending upon where we're going to be, maybe we have business in Queens and we want to also have a spot over there. So I can see where you need a good amount of good looking properties that are well curated, and the photos go such a long way on Airbnb to be able to like pull people in. Because a lot of what I've seen too on the Casa de Casa Instagram is just like great looking properties. And so socials, how are you guys leveraging socials to be able to like get new people? You've talked about now running ads on Meta, probably through Instagram, maybe even in Facebook, because people who travel digital nomads tend to use Facebook groups a lot. What does that strategy look like? Knowing that you have, a certain amount of resources, knowing that you're a team of two.
So we have to be very, very smart in where we're putting our money, where we're putting our resources. And there's a lot of things that founders can be doing themselves without actually spending any money themselves. They can sit down and be really open and show what's happening behind the scenes. This is a movement called Build in Public, and it's been going around for a couple of years. That's something that I'm trying to do and trying to show what exactly I've been working on, and what's the things I'm planning, what's the things I'm thinking. And part of the reason for that, and one of the benefits of that, is that people start to recognize you and associate you with that brand. So people will see me as maybe Mr. Casa de Casa, Mr. Alternative to Airbnb, whoever it is. I had some conversations here in Colombia, and it's quite funny speaking to other founders, and people are like, "Oh yeah, you're the Colombian Airbnb guy." That's like what I was known as by the end of the night, which is cool. Um, but it's something that people can leverage, and I don't see it being done enough. I see like some founders, they're so head into the code, and they're working the code. I'd say 99% of the time, and then they send out like one tweet, once a month or once every 2 weeks on Twitter, and they're like, "Why is nobody finding my app? Why is nobody using this?" And the proof is in the pudding. You have to get out there. You have to talk to people. You have to spread the message. And I'm doing this across Twitter. I'm doing this on YouTube. I'm doing this on TikTok. I've experimented with promoting posts on Twitter, which has increased give us a couple of spikes on our audience in terms of how many visitors we're getting to our website. And I think that's what founders need to do is they need to experiment with all the different options, find what works well, and double down on it. And this is something that I've heard Alex Formosi talk about as well. It's like you want to experiment, trying to figure out, is this distribution channel working for you? And if it does, then that's where you just have to, all your resources and trying to milk that cow, as they say. So
Yeah. So, okay, among those, where have you had the most success? And I asked that because I found you on X. You had posted something, and then when I saw that you were in Medellin and working on this project, I felt the pain of Airbnb. So I'm like, this is phenomenal. And he's kind of in my backyard just because buy a flight, Medellin to Bogota is 29 minutes maybe. So for me on X, I think you're doing great. But where are you most focused? Where are you finding the most like wins?
it's really interesting because whenever I look at the analytics, I can see that there's a lot of people who are coming to us directly, which means the analytics actually can't work out where it's coming from. So that could be the case that like they've read it on Twitter, or they might have seen it on Reddit itself, the platform. We've seen the biggest spike we've ever had is actually come from Reddit. So we were advertising a tool that we produced, which was to help Airbnb hosts to understand the new change to the service fees, where instead of the guest being able to pay 12% to 15% for the service fees and the host only paying 3%, that's going to be changing, and the hosts are going to be paying 15.5% come October. And that's going to be initially only for hosts who use property management software. And then later in the year, in December, they're going to be switching that over to pretty much everyone. So whenever I seen there's a lot of discussions like this, I thought, okay, this is a perfect opportunity, and this is a really good idea for other founders and what they can do to attract attention to their website is that you can build a free tool which is related to your niche, related to your product, advertise that, find people who need that tool or need that solution, and then naturally from that, people are going to visit the tool that you have and then later follow through into your website and read more about what it is you actually offer. And I've seen this tactic done a few times, and that's why I took inspiration from it. But the biggest spike we had was actually on Reddit, where I seen the same discussion coming up about this change in the Airbnb fees, and people don't understand what that's actually going to do to their payout. So for me, I was thinking, okay, I can easily explain this. Like it's not going to take me too long to build this tool, and I was managed to do this in 5 hours. I replied to that thread and just said, hey, I know this is a little bit confusing. Here's a tool that I built for everyone to help understand what exactly is going to happen whenever these new changes to the fees come into play. And yeah, we had I think it was a 900% increase in traffic uh, whenever I shared that link. And then that link was shared into other host communities as well in Nashville. Someone told me whenever they replied to the post. So it was really, really beneficial for us. But it's weird because we had a lot of traffic from that, but I would say the majority of our signups are actually coming from Twitter and also word of mouth. So we've had our early users who tried out the platform. They're saying to other people as well, as like, hey, if you're looking for a place to stay in Medellin, you should be giving this platform a try. So it's really amazing that you see those network effects where people are coming in and whenever they like the platform, they can see what you're building, they believe in what you're building, then they're pretty much doing free advertising for you. They're doing marketing for you as well. So to answer your question, I'd say it'd be, you know, probably half and half between Twitter, word of mouth, and then the rest of it is probably like the knock-on effects of like Twitter, or not Twitter, sorry, TikTok or YouTube or Reddit, because those would be all the direct traffic that were coming onto our website.
That's wonderful. I find YouTube to be like a really interesting thing because I think if somebody watches your entire video and whatever that is, it could be about anything, not even you're selling a product or a service, they're so much more likely to just invest in whatever it is you're talking about, whatever it is that you're doing, beyond just like they give you a subscribe and a like. They've like heard your spiel and they've made it all the way through your spiel, and most people, you can see the numbers after like 3 seconds. People are like, nope, this isn't interesting for me. One of the things I think about when I think about Airbnb, if I'm going to host, I'm like, okay, let me put my apartment up. One of the reasons why I would do it on Airbnb is because I have the peace of mind that if you come over to my apartment, like, all right, Mark's going to stay in my Airbnb, and Mark trashes it, I feel like I have a little bit of legal recourse because I have him in the same platform where he's probably, he's signed into that platform. He's signed things he probably doesn't understand. That if I'm like, dude, you broke my TV, it's $300, I want you to pay it. He can just be like, sorry, man, I'm out. Part of it is two things. One, I think Mark doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to damage his reputation on Airbnb, on the platform, because that is super important. And then I could write the review, hey, you broke my TV, wouldn't pay for it. The other part is like the legal part. Like I think Airbnb could just be like, you know what, Mark, thanks, we're kicking you out of this. What are the things to make sure that Caza De Casa stays a really positive experience, both for the guest and the host, where you kind of do away with those? And once again, my example is once I left a cup in the sink and they charged a huge service fee and I couldn't do anything and I couldn't argue it. She took a picture of it and she's like, yeah, you left dirty stuff. And I'm not going to like fight for days about dirty glass and things. So I just ate it. And from now on, I never leave one dirty glass in the sink. So what do you do on the platform to ensure that it's a really good experience for the hosts and the guests, and that in the event that someone's drunk and someone breaks a TV, what happens?
So I think there's a few different things you mentioned there. One of the things you talked about is what happens if something goes wrong, someone trashes the property and everything else. I'll get back to that later. I want to focus more so on your experience whenever you left a cop and they complain about that. And I think this is crazy. Like this is the problem we have with Airbnb right now. That we are when you go to an Airbnb and you're staying as a guest, you're expected to like pay cleaning fees, and then whenever you pay the cleaning fees, the host complains that you left something to be cleaned. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's like if you want to have a cleaning fee, then they shouldn't be able to complain that you left a cup. I think it's ridiculous that you had to eat that fee. And that actually brings me into another side of this problem as well, is that whenever you go through the whole process of disputes between hosts and guests on the Airbnb, I've seen so many complaints speaking online and also speaking to hosts and speaking to guests where people are saying, "Oh, I made a dispute about this complaint that they said. They said they wanted me to pay for some damage, and really there was just wear and tear, normal wear and tear from the guests, and uh, there seems to be no transparency from Airbnb in these situations, and that is something that I think Airbnb should do better, and I think that we can do it better as well. And one of the things I would love to do is I'd love to have a way where all this is left completely transparent, that if someone wants to say, okay, you need to pay me back because you've ruined my chair is now damaged because you were there. And I would like to have that completely transparent where you can see based on the host and based on the guest. So if a guest has had a dispute with a previous host, that should be all open. I don't see why it's beneficial to have that hidden away for Airbnb. And the second part of that is that I would actually like to implement a system, and there's something that I'm going to have to run by a few different hosts because I haven't had time to get feedback on this, and it's just really because I'm tied up with building this whole new search that we're working on right now. But I'd love to have a way where if you're a host on a platform like Airbnb and Casa de Casa, that you can be asked to participate in these disputes for another host, and I'd be completely anonymized. So if you imagine you have five other hosts you're reviewing the dispute. The reason why I'm thinking this could be the ideal solution is that those hosts do not want that guest to have a bad experience. Because if that guest has a bad experience and they're all siding with the host, then that means that guest is probably never going to return to that platform. And the fact that it's all anonymized, those hosts will review all the evidence and figure out, okay, like this is what's happened, and they'll be able to say we agree with the host or we agree with the guest, and then the dispute is handled. I think something like that is a lot more easily to scale. It's a lot easier to scale than relying upon building out a customer service or a customer support team where you have some people in your customer support team will be more forgiving to the guests, and then there's some in the customer support team will be more forgiving to the hosts. And that's something that I frequently hear from hosts and guests is like there's no consistency. We don't know why some cases it's approved and some cases it's not. So I think something like that I would love to build a system which is, you know, what I consider more fair because it's something that we all deserve. So, and then the second part that I want to talk about is whenever you have a bad experience inside the platform, say the host has a bad experience or the guest has a bad experience, we do not have reviews inside of the platform right now. It's something that we, because we're sending the users off the app to WhatsApp to discuss and to arrange a view and to make the payments, everything off app. It's very hard for us to be able to track how many people are actually going through making bookings, and we don't have that right now inside of the system. But having the ability to do fair reviews on both the guest side and the host side, I think that's something we need to do. And there's been some problems with Airbnb with that. But I also want to talk about air cover, which is something that Airbnb have. So in the case of you've damaged it, you're asked to, pay the charge of the damage of leaving the cup in the property. And it's interesting. I heard these stories about how a sofa's been ruined by the guest. The host would go through the process of trying to make a claim. I read up some statistics that apparently 40% of the claims are rejected by Airbnb. And not only that, when it comes to the claims you submit to Airbnb, they don't pay you on the value to replace that item. They pay you on the value of that item at that current time. So that takes into account depreciation. So what we have in Casa de Casa is we have partners inside of our platform where if they need home insurance for their property, we'll connect them with home insurance providers so to make sure they're completely fully covered in all cases. So it could be theft, it could be damage, it could be a fire, whatever. And also third party cover as well will be covered in that. So the home insurance providers we have are fantastic, and we've already sent a few of our hosts that way to help them out.
That was amazing. You did a great job talking through those things because I think those are the things that are on the edges, but the real innovation is at the edge and figuring out those things to make sure it's a really smooth process. I think what they say about restaurants is for every bad experience someone has at a restaurant, they tell 10 people. And I could imagine it's even more if I'm spending, like you said at the beginning, a couple $1,000s to stay at a place. If I have a bad experience, I'm like, never go to Caza De Casa. Whereas on the flip side, if I have a good experience, maybe I tell a couple people. Unfortunately, the hate is much louder than the praise in that sense. We've talked a little bit about, and you just alluded to that, like, hey, I can only focus on the customer service side so much because I'm really working on this, the search side. What is one thing right now that you wish you could dedicate more time to, and or what is the first, maybe you can answer this by, two birds with one stone. What is the first team member you think would be super beneficial to hire? And maybe they, like I said, maybe they go and get the same thing, but is there a feature you really wish you could spend more time on? And then also when you look to expand, just because going from 2 to 3 is going to be more than just growing the team by that percentage, potentially in output, the way things work. Talk to me about that, like growth, like, user focused growth.
Yeah, so I think the first question you asked there was where would I like to be spending more of my time if I could, and what would I be working on right now?
Yeah.
So naturally, I'm not the most social. I'm quite an introvert. So for me, doing all the marketing side and covering my story is something that was actually very challenging at the start, if I'm honest. And for me, I had many years working behind the scenes with other startups, so I got a lot of experience, seeing in meetings and see what was going on behind the scenes, seeing what other people were going through, other founders going through in terms of raising funds and fundraising. And that was really beneficial for me. But naturally, I love to write code. I love to build things. I love to build solutions to help people. That's what I do best. When it comes to marketing and trying to share videos and talk about what I'm doing, it might look that I'm extremely comfortable whenever I'm doing these videos and I look quite natural in all the videos I produce on TikTok and everything. But starting that was really challenging for me. So I think the first thing I want to do is I want to bring in someone who is a complete genius when it comes to marketing, who knows how to say things in the correct way, how to share our message in the correct way, how to share our message in the correct channels as well. And that's one of the things we talked about earlier in this podcast, this case of, you know, I'm experimenting because this is my first time really going down and trying to market something myself. Other other people who've worked in marketing for years and years, they have that experience. They know what works, and they're just like, okay, I've done this before. Let's go and do this. We need this, and then would see the results far quicker. So that's what I love. And the feature I love to do right now is like what we're going to be doing straight after the new search is released is we want to get the entire application translated in Spanish, which is it's a friction point right now inside of our application because whenever we're reaching out to hosts, you only speak in Spanish, and we're going back and forth. It's like, hey, we've got an application, we can help you find people to rent your property. They can't really use the application, so we're having to go through and dog food our own application and add those properties into the system ourselves. What I mean by dog fooding, and I'm not sure there might be some listeners who've never heard this expression before, but it's whenever founders and companies who are working on a product use their own product. I think this is something that I've noticed in the past, but if you ever opened an app and seen like some weird bug and it's not working correctly, to me, that looks like someone's not using their own product and they're not noticing these own problems. So for us, it's very important that we go through and we use the product ourselves and we get experience so we can see exactly what the guests are seeing and also what the hosts are saying. But yeah, I hope that's a good answer for you.
That was a great answer, and you would not know that you are an introverted person because I think you've done an excellent job this far. I have two final questions. One of them is about the. I think you posted this on X, and I was trying to find this. I couldn't find this, but I'm pretty sure you've said recently on X that people who are trying to solve the same problem, they're coming up with their own Caza De Casa, right? They probably don't have a cool name like that. They are getting, I don't know if it's cease and desist letters. I don't know if they're getting shadow banned. I don't know if they're getting legal trouble. I would assume if you use B&B in a product, you are going to get an illegal problem based off trademark, and I'm not sure some other stuff. What is okay for me to put in this title? Because I want to just put like building the alternative to Airbnb on YouTube. But as you know, YouTube is Google. And I don't want someone to then reach out, see it, and be like, start going at you guys. Because in media. I'm totally on the side of any press is good press, but I don't want to get you guys in legal trouble, right? Like I have no problem if Airbnb wants to start a war with you on X. I think that'd be a good thing probably over the long enough term, but I don't want to get you guys in legal trouble. So with that said, what are things you are doing to make sure you stay out of the crosshairs of Airbnb's legal team?
Yeah, so I think this is an area where I'm quite cautious about what we put inside the application. There's certain things that have been advised not to do. We can't use their logo and say really bad things which are inaccurate about Airbnb instead of our application. Yeah, what you said about Airbnb going after other companies. So there's a company called Tree B&B, and they had they lost their battle against Airbnb because they came at them with a trademark dispute. And I think it's a very scary situation for anyone who's got a business, especially an established business which has gone for a long time, and they're using the B&B name. And I'm so glad that when we started this, that we did not pick a name which ended with B&B. And we did look at a couple of different ones. We looked at Better B&B, we looked at Alter B&B. So thank goodness we didn't go down that line. But yeah, I think for me, I'm trying to be cautious with every single decision to make sure that I'm not going to respond to a legal battle with Airbnb. If it's a public legal battle, I agree with you. I don't think any like bad news is good news. You know, you can get your name out there, which is good, and you get some support from that. But we don't have the resources to engage in a full legal battle with Airbnb. So, you know, I think if that happens, it would be a very, very scary situation.
I think in the court of public opinion, you guys are going to win because you offer a product that has lower fees and maybe a better quality product. But I don't want to get you guys in like a legal trouble where all of a sudden, Mark, you're like hitting me up like, "Hey, man, thanks for having me on. Also, I'm in trouble now, and we have to tank the company." So we will probably maybe workshop a title together, which is something I normally never do. But I can see I can see that they are looking to quell people who have better solutions just because their fees have gotten so exorbitant over the last 5 to 6 years. So that's top of mind for me. Final thing, future signal. What is the future signal for if Uber's ride sharing? I want to call this home sharing. Where do you think this goes? I think Caza De Casa is definitely in the future game, which is like zero fees for platform, but an amazing product. But what are some things when you think about the future of Caza De Casa or just this idea of home sharing that right now seem crazy, but in the future won't? And maybe an example from Airbnb, because I think that they've actually done this well. I think that they're reading the room well, is they've created their experiences. Airbnb experiences, I just think they're awesome. And I think it's an easier way for them to get revenue than the home sharing.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put out this prediction, and it's just a trend I've been seeing that so many people are disgruntled, annoyed, pissed off about what's happening with Airbnb and the direction that they're going. I think Airbnb is going to disappear in 20 years' time. And yeah, I know that's a big bold statement, but there's so many. I've seen like another startup which is doing something very similar to what we're doing here at Medellin as well. I think there's a lot of demand for someone to offer a better solution. And if I didn't believe that there was enough demand to do a better solution in Airbnb, I never would have went down this path. But I think the direction that Airbnb is going right now, they're actually taking their eye off the ball. They're not focusing on what matters most, which is the stay experience. And I know you said that they have the experiences where they can do different things inside the city, get a guide tour or whatever else. That's really cool, and it's another way for them to make revenue. But I think the most recent update, they introduced all these different services, and that really did not land well with the hosts. And the reason why it didn't land well with the hosts is that if something goes wrong, whenever you have, so just to explain what the services are for anyone who doesn't understand this and is hearing about this for the first time. So services that you can get inside of Airbnbs, for example, you can have a Michelin starred chef come to your Airbnb, cook a meal for you and all your friends and all your family, and they will dish it all out. Or you can have a professional masseuse come to your property, do a massage there. Or you can have a professional hairstylist come in, do everything for you in the Airbnb. But interestingly enough, that is not covered in their air cover. So worst case scenario, you have a Michelin star comes in, or it's just a professional chef comes in, they're cooking up a meal, something goes wrong, they blow up the kitchen and it's completely destroyed. That's not going to be covered by air cover. And I remember seeing the reaction to this afterwards. I was like, there's so many people angry, they don't understand like what's going on. And I'm pretty sure the host cannot deny these services.
I have not heard about those services. I was talking about the ones that you alluded to, which is like, oh, like let's go back. You and I are in New York for a business trip, and we want a something about all the Hollywood films that have been done in Central Park, and we're gonna go take that. It's like $80. It's an hour. We get on a bike and we go do that, and it's like all this cool stuff. That other one sounds like a crazy legal quagmire loophole nightmare because I can see why that chef maybe wouldn't be legally bound because they're not the ones who are renting. And so they're just like friends who came over who caused a problem. And then therefore there's like a loophole. So anyways,
Exactly.
that's crazy. And I love that. That's exactly why I want to start to ask this question. What is the future signal of this industry? And I think, I don't think that's a bold thing. I think tech moves fast and I think people are constantly, younger generations just don't want to pay fees. They're just like fees are tied to legacy systems where you have way too much overhead and way too many people that are probably paid to do nothing. So I love that. I'm going to go ahead and put all of your links. I'll put in your personal links and Caza De Casa, just places where people can reach out. I'll put that in the episode show notes. So if you're listening to this and you want to reach out to Mark, please go check that out. If you want more information, also just go to the website cazadecasa.xyz. I'll also leave that in the show notes. Mark, hopefully I'll see you next week in Bogota. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to come on here and talk with you and share the message about Caza De Casa. I had an absolute blast.
Yes, I will see you soon. Please subscribe on YouTube or subscribe wherever you're listening to this on podcast platforms. And yeah, Mark, excited to meet up. And this is the future, and it's also exciting to me, just as a last point, to have you on, because I've had people on the podcast who later get big funding and blow up, and I feel like you are on that path. So yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks so much.